So thanks again to Professor Sastry and Adi for joining us today. We are really fortunate to have both of you here. And both of you had, like Shlok said, both of you had very, very interesting journeys in your life till now. And I would like to start with that. And we can start with Professor Sastry. So Professor Sastry, after graduating from IIT, you did your MBA from IIM, then you did MIT, PhD from MIT, and then you were faculty at IIM Ahmedabad when you founded ADR. So can you please describe your journey from MIT to founding ADR, and then what motivated you sort of to going into political reforms area?
Very hard to say. I just wanted to do something which I found interesting and meaningful. And ADR was really because the analysis is that the maximum power and influence and resources is with the government.
Mm-hmm.
No private sector can match the amount of money and resources the government has. And the government doesn't work properly. So if we can try to improve the government, how do we improve it? Who is in power? It is the politicians. So ADR was really set up to try and improve the political system and try to ensure that criminals and thugs and other such people who are there in politics, at least first we get the information out and then follow the money. As they say in Waterloo, not Waterloo, Watergate, follow the money. So that was the motivation for starting ADR. Because we thought that we have not succeeded, but we have made a bit of a difference. So the motivation really is to improve the quality of elections and politics so that those who are in power, good people come into power, and then the country improves.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Can you also talk a little bit more about ADR? What ADR has achieved and what are they doing right now?
You see, you can have grand theories and technologies, but you have to get results. So very specifically, so the strategy always has been to get the public involved. Mm-hmm. And also all the principal stakeholders, which includes the Supreme Court of India, the Election Commission, and the media, of course, and as many citizens as are interested. So and it has to be very specific. So we focused on criminalization of politics. Because, for example, many of you may be amazed to know that today, the Lok Sabha, which we all collectively elected in 2019, has 43% MPs with a criminal record. It's a great leap forward. In 2014, it was 34%. Now it has gone to 43%. And many of the cabinet ministers have got criminal cases against them, because this is not something, these are not wild allegations. These are affidavits that they have sworn and filed themselves with the Election Commission. So we were very clear that we have to focus on the criminalization of politics, and then the money. Huge amounts of money are being spent in elections. And as I said, in Watergate, you have to follow the money. Paisa kahan se aa raha hai? So we started this 10, 15 years ago. I mean, a few years after we started ADR. So this criminalization of politics, what happened is we filed a petition in the Supreme Court back in 99. It's a long story, but anyway, the Supreme Court has said that they have to give a sworn affidavit giving details of their criminal records. And several judgments have come in the last 15 years, some through our intervention, some through intervention of various other NGOs, citizens, etc. So all this information is in the public domain. And we are seeing that the Supreme Court particularly is slowly trying to maneuver in such a way that there's no place to run or escape. Let's see how it all pans out. And just many of you will have questions. Until you are convicted of a crime, you cannot be disbarred. But you can have 10 murder cases against you and continue to stand for elections as per the current law and the constitution. So that's what we're fighting against. But at least it's in the public domain. The other is about the money. So political parties were not filing the income tax returns. They get 100% tax exemption. and we said that the citizens of India have a right to know ये पैसा कहाँ से आ रहा है. So that was another long struggle. So now we know where the money is coming from, or we know how much money is coming, but we don't know where the money is coming. So we started a campaign on that. Every week or every ADR is going on giving press releases almost every day. And when that information started coming out, we said that political parties should be declared as to be under the Right to Information Act, RTI, so that everything becomes transparent, at least on the issues of finance. So the government retreated, the current government only, and passed the electoral bonds law, which makes it even more opaque. So we don't know where the money is coming from anymore. So we are fighting all those things. But whatever information is available, we are putting it out there in the public domain, and a lot of people are concerned about it. So that is briefly what ADR does, but ADR has a massive outreach program with the youth of the country, because we feel that the youth are the future, those who are in colleges particularly, or even in high school. I mean, as an anecdote, recently the debating club of St. Stephen's got in touch with us, and they want to partner with us on having some discussions on the issues that we're just discussing, that we are able to reach a larger number of younger people. And of course, we continue to engage with the media. And the most important thing I should mention is, हमारे देश में जो वोट डालते हैं वो अंग्रेजी बोलते हैं, अंग्रेजी नहीं बोलते हैं जो वोट डालते हैं, और जो वोट नहीं डालते हैं, they all speak in English. So we live in a 10% world where we talk to each other on high tech and Zoom and in accented English, but बाहर झुमरी तलैया में उनको पता ही नहीं क्या हो रहा है ये सब. But they are the people who vote. So ADR and even in CCD, we are very clear कि हम जनता जनार्दन जो आम लोग हैं उनके साथ काम करेंगे उनकी भाषा में. Because that is where the change comes. हम आपस में जितना मर्जी शेक्सपियर को कोट कर लें या गालिब के वो सुना दें कविताएं, कुछ नहीं होने वाला उससे. Change happens when everybody is involved. So we focus in ADR on the vernacular media. The amount of coverage we get in Hindi, Odia, Bengali, Telugu, Tamil, Gujarati is like 100 times more than what we get in the English and all this. WhatsApp होता है, कुछ भी नहीं है वो तो. So we are very clear that to engage the people of India, we have to go way beyond English. So that's another part of our strategy.
Cool. Thanks, Professor Sastry, for sharing that. Okay, my second question is for Adi. And Adi, you had an equally interesting journey. You founded Gramwani right, I think during your PhD or maybe right after your PhD. Can you talk more about Gramwani? What motivated you? I mean, during my PhD, I was just sort of how to get through the PhD, right? That was my only goal.
That is always the that is always the only thing. Yeah, at that
just
point.
Get like 4 or 5 papers out and try to get it. So can you describe more about your journey founding Gramwani?
Right. Yeah. So actually, it's very much what Professor Sastry just said. Ki the change has to start from the people. So actually during my PhD, I was very fortunate that I got a lot of flexibility to try out all sorts of things. At that time we were, we are talking about 2005, 2006, around that time when things with social media were picking up. And over there at that point, now of course social media has gotten a very bad name for misinformation and everything, but at that point it was really seen as a very empowering medium which was going to give power to the people. And we were seeing all sorts of super exciting cases coming up of people using YouTube and so on to share videos on human rights abuses, to hold local governments accountable. And this was really genuinely technology in the hands of the people that was giving them the power. So at that point, I'm coming from a technology engineering background. We have had very, very little understanding of really how the world works. So at that time, our goal was very simple. There's this internet available for people like us, but if we talk about rural areas, then we have a vast digital divide. So how do we get across to these areas? And so during my PhD, I worked a little bit on figuring out how to provide internet connectivity in rural areas through various kinds of methods like long distance wireless networks and several other things. It was during this journey that when we actually got on the ground for the first time, and we did these pilot deployments. So we worked in South India, we worked in Ghana. So that's when we started realizing that technology is actually the easiest problem to solve. And but things are way more complicated if people are not able. There's literacy challenges, there's just local social inequities on the ground that impede people's access. Even if you do provide internet, not everybody will be able to use it. So that was really the genesis of Gramvani, where we said that we need to go beyond internet, and we zeroed down on using voice. Because voice is that lowest common denominator that, irrespective of literacy, anybody can still access. So we started working initially with community radio systems, and then later on we moved on to using IVR, interactive voice response. So here the idea is that people have mobile phones and they don't need the internet, but only through a simple mobile phone they can call, they can listen to audio messages, and they can record their own message. So it was basically, how do we make a simple mobile phone, non-internet based, as a medium for people to share voices with each other. And so we built applications on these IVR systems, and then we started working with several rights-based activists, people like Jean Drez, Ritika Khera, several other people. And that's really when we started seeing that now that people do have this kind of a participatory media in their hands, then how can they use it to hold local stakeholders accountable, like ration shops which don't open in time, there's denial of food, people don't get the Narega wages in time. So that is that's some of the things that we're doing over there, of really putting more power in the hands of the people, so which they can hold local governments accountable. And we've also worked, in fact, we've been working with ADR also. So just like what Professor Sastry was saying, that how do we actually, even for political reform, how do we get people more aware about criminal histories and qualifications and so on of their politicians. So this is really one of the ways where through these voice-based systems, we can reach a lot more people. It's more accessible, more inclusive. So yeah, so I mean, that's sort of how we got around to doing Gramvani.
Great. Thanks, Adi, for sharing that. My next question is for Professor Sastry. So Professor Sastry, you also founded CCD, and that's into field of agriculture, helping farmers. Can you tell us more about CCD? And it's sort of completely very different from political reforms. How did you get into that?
Actually, the problem of poverty is staring us in the face in India, and right from childhood until today, it's a matter of great concern, and it bothers me a lot. So now India has far too many poor people. So I was thinking, what can we do, not in terms of ideas, but action on the ground. So the idea was to have something which will scale up. So the two largest sectors of poverty in India, one is agriculture and the other is landless labor, जो दिन दिहाड़ी करते हैं.
Right.
So, for example, now the cities are getting crowded with people of these two varieties everywhere because they cannot survive in the villages and so on. So I was more interested in the landless labor because they're even more garib, but I could not figure out what to do. This was back in 2000, 2001. I didn't know what to do. So I started going around the villages of India and talking to the people in the villages. एक साल मैं घूमता ही रहा, छुट्टी लेके मैं घूमता था, गांव-गांव जाके लोगों से बात करता कि हो क्या रहा है. Because I found, and this is a friendly sort of suggestion to everyone here, don't listen to me, don't read the books. Our guru is Google, भाड़ में जाए Google. जनता को अपना गुरु बनाओ और जाके गांव में देखो हो क्या रहा है. Because you can never understand what is going on until you go there and talk to the people. So I spent 1 year doing that very keenly. And as somebody said, with an open mind and a mouth shut. तो गांधी जी को गोखले जी ने बताया था when he came back from South Africa, you please go around India and keep your mind open and your mouth shut. क्योंकि हमको सब कुछ मालूम है, IIT में पढ़ लिए हैं, अमेरिका में पढ़ लिए हैं, बड़ी बड़ी नौकरियां कर रहे हैं, खूब पैसा कमा रहे हैं, दुनिया भर के लोगों को जानते हैं, दुनिया भर की किताबें पढ़ ली हैं, तो सब कुछ मालूम है हमको. तो वो सब कुछ जो मालूम है उसको बाहर भाड़ में फेंकिए, थ्रो इट इन द डस्टबिन एंड गो एंड टॉक टू द पीपल डायरेक्टली. हो क्या रहा है गांव में. That is the only way to understand, because if you are interested in these issues. So then I discovered that there is enough money in agriculture, except it doesn't go to the farmer. Every food processing company, every local trader, every local processing unit, the ITCs and the Haldirams and the Nestles and of course Amul itself, everybody is making tons of money except the farmer. So there is money in food, but there is not money for the agriculture. So the only thing is to organize it in such a way that the money goes to the farmer. So that's why we started working on cooperatives. And we have steadily worked up the value chain. So today we work with more than 40,000 small farmers. Only last week, Flipkart and a week before that, Big Basket on their own, without our invitation, they came to visit and they said, we want to buy more from you. So the trick really is to enable the people to do it themselves. There are only two things there. One is to organize the people, which is very similar to the Amul model. And the other is to set up a business model which works. And the business models are standard. There's nothing deep and insightful or innovative in that. I mean, of course, we use all the technologies that are possible to do marketing and all sorts of things. But the idea is to just use the standard business models and put it into the hands of the farmers, which is what we have done. There's no rocket science. There is nothing very innovative or insightful or brilliant. गांव में जाके काम करना है बस, and enable the farmers to do it themselves. So, for example, in the oldest district that we work in, Anantapur, which Kaushal has also visited several times, without our prodding, the Farmers Federation, the board of directors, have decided three things, which I was amazed. They said that they will invest in the business because they have made profits. So, वो अपना पैसा उसमें डालेंगे, they'll invest. Normally, we say कि भाई गरीब लोग हैं, हम कुछ करके दे देंगे उनके लिए. So they are investing their money. Number two, they do massive amounts of work for the government because they are well organized. So minimum support price, subsidy seat distribution worth 30-40 crores in the district they do. So get 30-40 lakhs every year as service fee. They're saying that since the NGO, our NGO, which is separate from the Farmer Federation, is doing some of the work, 30% of the fees they'll give it to the NGO. So, matlab, they have started taking responsibility in financial terms also. And the trick is you have to start making profits and keep reminding them कि आपकी संस्था है, पैसे आपके हैं, लागत आपकी है, जिम्मेदारी आपकी है, आपको खुद करना है. And trust them to do it. Of course, you are there on the sidelines to make it happen. The problem with good intentioned people is वो सेवा करना चाहते हैं, and intelligent people का और भी problem है, वो सब कुछ जानते हैं, वो करके दिखाना चाहते हैं, क्योंकि मैं इतना बड़ा I'm such a फन्ने खान guy, I'm so brilliant, तो मैं करके दिखाऊंगा. आप लोग तो गरीब किसान, आप क्या कर सकते हो? So these two great dangers of thinking that you are very intelligent and you will implement, and the other that बेचारे गरीब लोग हैं, वो क्या कर सकते हैं, तो हम पैसे लाके उनके मुंह में रखेंगे. These are two big dangers of the genuine people. Fraud NGOs हैं, सरकारें हैं जो तो politically misuse करते हैं इन सब चीजों को, उनकी बात ही नहीं कर रहा हूँ. So that's all we are doing, and it has worked very well, and hopefully it will keep growing. But we need funds. To be very honest, we need funds to make this happen. There is a bit of a donation angle to it, but we can discuss it later if there are questions.
Sure, I do have one question on that regard. But so moving on, thanks, Professor Sastry, for that answer. Moving on, Adi, can you describe more about things that you have learned from Gramvani? I mean, specifically in your last answer, you talked about how social development and technology sort of are different beast, and maybe it's easier to handle technology. Can you talk more about that relationship and things that you've learned from Gramvani in that context?
Yeah, so actually, so very much in line with what Professor Shastri was saying, it's only when you get on the ground that you really start understanding what the challenge is. Initially, मतलब you would think कि एक model बना लिया है and you put it on the ground, it will work as expected, but that's just very simplistic to think in that way. So, मतलब for example, just in terms of who has access to technology. So now when we started working with volunteers, we started understanding that the volunteers will actually bring people who are from their own community. And but if you don't have representativeness, if you don't have different caste groups represented, and especially for example with gender, so men volunteers are not able to really bring women onto the platform. And so यहाँ पे we started seeing a lot of conflicts that people who wanted to participate, but let's say they are not very savvy with using phones, so they need some training, they need some hand holding, but they're more comfortable with people from their own social groups. So so these are just some initial learnings, but we started understanding that we to really scale up this kind of a model, it wasn't just the technology that was the answer, but we also needed a field force. We needed volunteers on the ground, and we had to ensure representativeness from across the volunteers. So that's how, I mean, as we grew, we our team also diversified. We were just engineers when we started, but now so Gramani is now a 70-member team, and we have people from across content development, from people who are working in the community on the ground, people who are skilled in specific social sectors like health or education or governance. And so the volunteers on the ground therefore became really a face in the community, and they are the ones who, in fact, the way we now think about it is that the volunteers are the ones who use the technology to do good things in their community. So it's not as if the technology is empowering them. It's really the other way around, that they have figured out how to use these tools to do great things. So for example, even in governance, where I was talking about this example of ration shops and Nareka and so on. So all of this is actually driven by the volunteers themselves, that people call and they record problems that they're facing with government schemes. And the volunteers, many of them come from activist backgrounds. So they engage with the local government officials. They forward these messages on WhatsApp groups, on Facebook. They go to the district officers, they go to the block officers and play these messages for them and take a commitment that they will resolve these issues. So, so the biggest learning really in all of this was that the people are the most important part. And so as a technologist, that was really humbling. That's probably been one of the biggest sort of learnings and breakthroughs in how we look at all the rest of our work. So everything sort of followed from that, because then the volunteers really became the people on the ground who were informing us about what else do they need to do with the technology. And that opened up so many other use cases. So in places where the volunteers themselves were from agricultural backgrounds, they were able to bring a lot of farmers on the platform. And then they themselves started programs on agricultural advisory. And they figured it all out on their own, that people could ask questions and they would get answers from the local Krishi Vigyan Kendra or other local NGOs because they had all of those networks in place. Similarly, in other districts where we work, there is a very strong youth presence on the platform. And over there, the volunteers themselves brought in people from coaching institutes and other places for career counseling workshops. Similarly, we have women-oriented platforms where the volunteers are all women, and these platforms are meant so only probably women use it. And there's a lot of discussion on social norms like early marriage, domestic violence, and again the stories that the volunteers then begin to share are what are going to inspire other women also. So yeah, so I mean, this was a lot more, but I think this is probably one of the main things, and which also pretty much is in line with what Professor Shastri is also saying, that you only once you get on the ground, you start to realize, and you then need to flip the things over, that it's not you who's going out there and providing a service, but you're just providing the infrastructures maybe, but people are the ones who really are instrumental. They figure out how to if they're able to figure out how to use it, then there's unlimited possibilities.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Adi. That's very, very informative. So I do have more questions, but maybe I'll go with my last question for now, so that we can let people ask questions. So this question is for both of you. How can people, especially in US and even in India, how can they contribute to Gram Money and CCD, or in general to social development, right? I mean, I think Professor Shastri will say the first best thing to do is to go on the ground. Maybe what's the second best thing? So if both of you can share, maybe Professor Shastri can share first. What can people do to help?
Yeah, see, there are obviously 2-3 things. In general, I'm not talking specifically about CCDA. One is to support people financially, if not at an individual level, then collectively. Like you guys did such a great job for COVID. I was really amazed at the way Vikrant and his friends got together, and all of you people in the US were able to raise resources for the COVID and lockdown problems. So that kind of thing, for causes that are interesting to people, that should continue and should be scaled up. And second is, depending on your interest, you can help in various ways by giving your time and expertise and contacts and making connections, etc. It's a pretty general sort of a statement that I'm making. So for example, Kaushal, your classmate, is now trying to massively expand the marketing and build Farmveda, which is our brand, into a brand like Amul. So all of you all over the world can help Kaushal to take this brand international. He has managed to enter 2 countries, but you guys can all sit together, have some discussions, and figure out कि भाई इसको दुनिया भर में कैसे बेचें, so that the Garib Kisans of India, not only prosper but make a mark for themselves. So those kind of things. I mean, the field is open.
Sure. Thanks, Professor Shastri. Adi, you want to add something?
So yeah, I mean, so like Professor Shastri said, it was, I mean, that sort of also brought all of us together again after so many years. That during COVID, really thanks to Vikrant, there was such a strong mobilization. It was great. There's so much funds that we were able to channel to many of our partners on the ground. So yeah, so I mean, that's definitely one thing. I think what it also brought up, and then we had a couple of calls with Mitesh and several others, that it really brought the network together to start thinking about what are the problems on the ground. That sort of next to actually getting on the ground, at least can everybody build up greater awareness? Okay, what is the situation on the ground on so many things, right? Employment, poverty, food security. So I think if we can sustain that momentum to keep sharing information with each other, I think that would be very useful, because then all of us can respond effectively as and when the need arises. So it could be maybe something, I mean, if another wave of COVID hits, maybe there's more funds needed, or like Professor Shastri was saying, new ideas like international expansion for Farmveda. So I think if we are able to sustain the momentum in the network with the right passion, the right mindset, then I think there'll be many opportunities that will keep coming, and we'll be able to mobilize. One additional point that I wanted to make, which so again, although we said that technology is actually the simplest thing, but we do feel that it can act as a leverage point for many mobilizing many changes. So there's always room for people to contribute remotely, and in fact, because of the remote work that COVID actually initiated, and one of the unfortunate things has been that tech hiring in India has become very, very difficult. because suddenly everybody realized that technology, coding, and all of this work doesn't need you to sit in an office. You can just do it from anywhere. There's been, I mean, there's a couple of interesting news items that people have been able to take up international engagements, and therefore there's been massive attrition from full-time jobs in Indian companies in the tech sector. So there's definitely room if people can help on technology development, open source strategies. So there's so much anyway happening in this space of just a stronger push anyways happening in the overall tech space towards open source. So that can really build up a wider community who can actually build new things and which can open up many other opportunities. So here, organizations like Gramvani, organizations like CCD, and so many others, we can really bring the problem statements, because now we've really understood that, okay, what technology created in what kind of a manner for what purpose can be useful. So we can bring those problem statements, and then if we can have more people contributing, I think that could also be one way.
Okay, thanks, Adi. That's very cool. So actually, I wanted this to be my last question, but maybe Professor Sastry talked about Kaushlind. I can have maybe one question for Kaushi. So Kaushlind, if you can unmute. So let me just first introduce Kaushlind. He's a very, very dear friend of mine. I mean, I'm my batchmate. He was almost my pseudo roommate. So he was not my roommate, my neighbor, but he used to always sort of, stay in our room. So it's like a pseudo roommate. So Kaushlind had a very, very interesting journey. He has been CEO of a software company, Mantra Labs, and then now he's CEO of FarmVeda. So it's like a sort of 360-degree turn for him, 180-degree turn for him. Going from software to agriculture, helping farmers. So Kaushli, if you can describe a little bit about your journey, how did you go from software to helping farmers?
Hi JJ. Hi everyone. Basically, my background and my family background is from agriculture. I happened to come to IIT and met you guys, and I spent some great years there. But it was always in the back of my mind that I had to do something for the public. What it was, how it was never clear, right? So after 10th, 12th, for your job and everything, you try to do whatever best options are available, and that's how I reached Kanpur. After that, by default mode, I went into software, Infosys and other MNC companies, but it was all default mode. I never enjoyed those things. I was just going through motions. Mantra Labs happened. That was one thing which was there, where I really enjoyed. Started with Parag. 4 years. Those 4 years, I never, I never knew. Time flew, right? But 2002 to 2012, it was difficult. I was always wondering what should I do, whether should I get into sports or help people get into sports, or but Mantra Labs was going great. And 4 years I came to US, also met a lot of you guys there, and it was all going good. Then for Mantra Labs only, I got involved in alumni association activities just to expand Mantra Labs, and meet, do networking and meet more people. So through those events, one of the event was Social Entrepreneurs and Enterprises, where we did an event on agriculture, and Professor Sastry was one of the speakers in that. That's how I met him for the first time, right? And after the event, we again met him and tried to understand what he's doing. And that's when I understood that there is something really can happen which actually can make a change, right? The kind of work CCD is doing, that's when I realized that if this can be expanded, then the farmers and their poverty, that can be eliminated. So, I mean, I was very sure that this is something which I should support for whatever way, and I started supporting part time. But after 4 or 5 months, I realized that okay, I think, and we spoke to Sastry sir, and I went to Anandpur and met farmers there and everything, and and it was like you start feeling something, right, that you have to do it. The only thing is whether should you jump or not. So I just jumped and I thought, okay, let me try this. So now it's been 3 years and I've traveled a lot of places, met a lot of farmers, and we have made some good progress. And it's ongoing. And again, same feeling. I mean, I'm not realizing how time is flying. There are so many things to do. So it's something you don't have to try to do, right? It comes naturally now. So that is how it's going on.
Thanks, Kashi. That's very interesting and very motivating.